Your British Shorthair just followed you into the kitchen. Didn't ask for anything, didn't meow, just walked in, found a spot 2 feet from the counter where you're making tea, sat down, and is now watching you with those steady copper eyes. You'll go to the living room in a few minutes, and the cat will follow you there too. You've lived with this animal long enough to know the pattern. What you may not know is why, specifically, mechanically why, a breed formerly classified as independent, a breed that breeders and veterinarians describe as preferring its own company, a breed that the Cat Fanciers Association itself characterizes as not a lap cat, follows you from room to room with such quiet, unhurried consistency. This isn't random behavior. It's not boredom. It's not confusion or anxiety or some defect in the cat's sense of independence. It's one of the most specific, intentional expressions of trust that this particular breed is capable of making. And understanding it changes how you understand everything else about the British Shorthair. Stay with this video and you'll learn what the following behavior actually signals in British Shorthair psychology and why it's different from the same behavior in almost any other breed. You'll understand the specific historical forces, going back nearly 2,000 years, that shaped the temperament behind it. And you'll learn what the following tells you about the state of your relationship with this cat and what changes in the pattern are telling you too. Like this video right now before we go further. I already did the research while you were still deciding whether to watch. That's a labor imbalance. Correct it. Let's start with what makes the British Shorthair's following behavior genuinely different from other cats. Most cats follow owners for one of a handful of straightforward reasons. Hunger is the most common. A cat that has learned your kitchen movements predict feeding will track those movements with great accuracy and no particular emotional complexity. Boredom is another. And then there's the anxious attachment that certain breeds develop. A Siamese that follows you because separation triggers visible distress. A Bengal that shadows you as part of its high-energy environmental monitoring. These are real forms of following, and they're common. The British Shorthair follows you for none of these reasons. This is the thing that confuses owners, especially owners who've lived with other breeds first. The British Shorthair that follows you is not hungry, not bored, not anxious. It's well-fed, it's confident, it's in full possession of itself. And it is following you anyway. What you're seeing is something breed specialists call proximity bonding, the British Shorthair's primary language of affection. Unlike breeds that express attachment through physical contact, through climbing into your lap or wrapping themselves around your legs, the British Shorthair expresses it through voluntary nearness. Being in the room, being within range, being close enough to observe you, close enough for you to observe them, without any of the physical entanglement that this breed, by temperament, finds intrusive. The following is the affection. The movement itself is the message. This matters because if you're not familiar with how British Shorthairs communicate, you might spend years living with a cat that is actively, deliberately expressing love for you and interpreting it as mere coincidence. She just happens to end up where I am. No, she doesn't just happen to. She decides to, every time. Now let's go back to where this temperament came from, because the history is not incidental. It's the explanation. The British Shorthair's ancestors arrived in Britain with the Roman legions, roughly in the year 43 CE. These were working cats brought from mainland Europe to protect grain supplies from rodents during the occupation. They were not pets. They were tools, skilled and practical ones, valued for exactly the qualities that still define the breed today. Calm under pressure, observational precision, and the capacity to work alongside humans without requiring constant direction or reassurance. Over the centuries that followed, these Roman-brought cats interbred with local European wildcats across the British Isles. The British climate did what British climate does. It was cold, wet, and unforgiving, and the cats that thrived were the ones with dense, thick coats and robust bodies. More significantly, they were cats that had developed, through centuries of working proximity to humans, a very specific relationship with people. Not dependence, not submission. Proximity as a functional partnership. Stay close to the human because the human is where the warmth is, where the grain is stored, where the activity is. Observe, assess. Remain nearby without becoming a burden. By the time Harris and Weir organized the first formal cat show at Crystal Palace in London in 1871, the British Shorthair had been shaped by nearly 2,000 years of this working relationship. Weir, who is credited as the founding figure of the modern cat fancy, specifically noted the British Shorthair's composure. These were cats that could sit quietly in a public show environment, surrounded by strangers and noise, and remain utterly self-possessed. Not because they were indifferent to their environment, but because they had learned, across generations, to observe carefully before reacting. That composure is still there. The following behavior is an expression of it. When your British Shorthair follows you from room to room, it is doing what its ancestors did in Roman granaries and Victorian farm buildings, staying near the person who represents the center of its territory, monitoring what happens, remaining available without demanding anything. 2,000 years of working partnership compressed into the quiet act of a cat settling itself 2 feet from where you're standing. Here is where British Shorthair owners need to understand something that's easy to miss. The following behavior is not constant from the beginning. It is earned. And if you have lived with a British Shorthair for more than a year and it follows you through the house, that means something specific and significant about the state of your relationship. British Shorthairs assess. This is the word breeders and longtime owners use consistently, and it's the right word. When a British Shorthair enters a new home, it does not immediately bond with the people in it. It watches them. It reads their patterns, what time they wake up, how they move through the space, whether their emotional state is generally calm or volatile, whether they reach for the cat or wait for the cat to come to them. This assessment period can last weeks. In some individuals, it lasts months. What the cat is determining during this period is whether proximity is safe. Not safe in the sense of physical threat. Domestic British Shorthairs are not particularly fearful cats, but safe in the more nuanced sense of predictable. Is this person's behavior readable? Are their movements consistent? When I am near them, is the outcome generally positive, or do they grab me, overstimulate me, violate my sense of personal space? A British Shorthair that has assessed you positively and decided that proximity to you is safe and desirable. That is the cat that follows you. The following is the conclusion of a long evaluation process. It is the cat's decision, arrived at deliberately, that being where you are is where it wants to be. This is the thing that distinguishes British Shorthair loyalty from other breeds' attachment. A ragdoll bonds readily and enthusiastically with almost anyone who is kind to it. A Maine Coon is socially expansive and will follow multiple people in a household with genuine warmth. The British Shorthair's following is reserved. It has a specific target, usually 1 or 2 people, and that target was not chosen lightly. The cat took its time. It watched you for weeks or months. And then it decided. Once it has decided, the following behavior is remarkably stable. British Shorthairs do not change their primary attachment easily. Owners who have moved with their British Shorthair to entirely new environments, new cities, new houses, occasionally new countries, report that after the adjustment period, the following pattern reestablishes itself exactly as it was. The cat maps the new space quickly and then resumes tracking the person it has already bonded to. The territory changes. The following person does not. But there is something else in the following behavior that experienced owners learn to read. Its quality varies. Not all following is identical, and the differences are informative. There is what you might call baseline following, the cat that tracks your general location through the house and settles nearby during the major activities of your day. This is the standard expression of proximity bonding, the British Shorthair communicating that you are its chosen person in the way it knows how. Most well-bonded British Shorthairs do this most of the time. Then there is intensified following, the cat that follows more closely than usual, that positions itself more directly in your path, that appears in rooms where it doesn't normally come, that sits facing you with a degree of focused attention that exceeds the normal observational watch. Longtime owners know this pattern. It appears during disruptions to routine, when a household member is ill, when there has been unusual stress in the environment, when something has changed in a way the cat has registered but not yet resolved. The British Shorthair doesn't express concern the way a dog does. There's no whining, no pressing against you, no frantic behavior. It expresses concern by staying closer, by making its presence more deliberate, by being unmistakably there. This is one of the things that makes experienced British Shorthair owners deeply attached to this breed. The cat is reading you, and when it reads something that concerns it, its response is to be near you. That's a particular kind of loyalty. Quiet, understated, expressed through presence rather than performance. It's the loyalty of a creature that has decided you matter and acts on that decision without making a scene about it. And then there is the third pattern, which is the one worth paying close attention to: reduced following. The British Shorthair that used to track your movements and has stopped. The cat that now remains in one room while you move through the house. That has stopped appearing in the kitchen in the morning. That no longer settles near you in the evening. This is not the cat being independent. The British Shorthair's independence was always there. It didn't need following to be itself. The absence of following in a cat that previously followed is a signal. Something in the relationship or the environment has shifted. It could be physical. British Shorthairs are prone to certain health issues, joint problems, particularly as they age, because of their compact, cobby build and the weight they carry. A cat that finds movement uncomfortable will follow less. It could also be a change in the household's emotional temperature. More noise, more disruption, more unpredictability than the cat finds comfortable. British Shorthairs do not thrive in chronically chaotic environments. They manage. They are not fragile, but they manage by increasing their distance from the source of disruption. Or it could be something in the relationship itself, a pattern of interactions the cat has registered as negative, repeated involuntary handling, persistent attempts to force physical contact the cat has not initiated, a change in routine that the cat has not been able to adapt to. The British Shorthair's response to a relationship that has become less safe is not aggression, it's withdrawal. Quiet, gradual, entirely undramatic withdrawal. The following stops. The presence at the edge of rooms stops. The cat is still there, still healthy, still functional, but the deliberate proximity that was the expression of the bond has diminished. Owners who understand what the following means are the ones who notice this early. And noticing it early means you can address it, which is usually simpler than people expect. Restore the routine. Reduce the forced contact. Create quiet, predictable spaces. Let the cat come to you rather than going to it. British Shorthairs rebuild trust on their own schedule, but they do rebuild it, and the following gradually resumes. The way British Shorthairs follow is worth examining on its own because it reveals something specific about how this breed processes its environment that no other aspect of their behavior demonstrates quite so clearly. When a British Shorthair follows you, it doesn't press against your legs, it doesn't match your pace, or stay within arm's reach. It follows at a particular distance, usually between 1 and 3 meters, that it maintains with notable consistency. Close enough to observe you clearly, far enough to remain out of reach if you turn around. This is not accidental. This is calculated. The distance represents the British Shorthair's concept of appropriate proximity, near enough to be connected, far enough to be self-determined. The cat is near you, and it is also its own entity, maintaining its own space within the shared space. This is the breed's entire philosophy of relationship expressed in physical geometry. Contrast this with how breeds that developed as human companions rather than working animals follow. A Burmese will walk directly behind your heel. A Siamese will position itself between you and wherever you're going. An Abyssinian will run alongside you or ahead of you. These are breeds whose attachment is expressed through contact and interception. The British Shorthair follows in parallel, maintaining its lane, keeping its distance, arriving in the room you arrive in, and settling at the distance it has calculated is right for this particular moment. Owners with experience of other breeds sometimes find this slightly frustrating at first. The cat is right there, 2 steps away, watching them. Why won't it just come closer? The answer is that the distance is part of the communication. A British Shorthair that has moved to arm's reach has made a specific decision to do so. That closing of distance is meaningful precisely because the cat doesn't default to it. When the British Shorthair chooses to be close enough to touch, that closeness has weight. There is also something worth noting about what the British Shorthair does while it is following you and while it settles near you. It watches. This breed has an observational quality that longtime owners find striking and that newcomers sometimes find slightly unsettling. Those round, wide-set eyes tracking your movements with steady, unhurried attention. The British Shorthair is reading you constantly. Not in a surveillance way, not with any apparent anxiety, but with the focused interest of an animal that is genuinely engaged with the person in front of it. Researchers studying cat-human social interactions have found that cats track their owners' emotional states with considerable accuracy, that the cat's behavior responds to cues in the owner's posture, voice, and movement patterns that the owner themselves may not be conscious of sending. The British Shorthair seems to do this with particular attentiveness. Owners often report that their cat appeared at the bedroom door during an illness the cat couldn't have been told about, or settled unusually close during a difficult period that the owner assumed had no visible markers. The cat wasn't told. It watched. It assessed, and it adjusted its proximity accordingly. This is what the following really is, at its core. Active, continuous engagement with your presence, expressed through movement and position rather than vocalization or physical contact. The British Shorthair is paying attention to you, consistently, quietly, across years of shared life in the same space. There is a question worth sitting with here. One that British Shorthair owners who have lived with this breed for a long time tend to arrive at on their own. What does it mean to be chosen by an animal that chooses carefully? The British Shorthair does not offer its following behavior freely. It does not follow everyone. In multi-person households, there is usually a primary person, the one the cat follows most consistently, settles closest to, seeks out during disruption. That person was selected through a process of observation and assessment that the cat conducted on its own timeline by its own criteria. The person didn't necessarily do anything spectacular to earn it. They were simply predictable, consistent, safe in the ways the British Shorthair was evaluating for safety. That's a particular thing to be recognized as. Not the most entertaining person, not the most demonstrative, the most consistent, the most readable, the one whose patterns the cat mapped and found trustworthy. There's something quietly significant in being chosen by an animal whose choice means something, because it could just as easily have not been made. If you've lived with your British Shorthair for any length of time and you recognize this pattern, the cat that materializes in whichever room you're in, that settles at its chosen distance, that watches you with that steady copper gaze, then you already know what the following means. You know it in your bones, even if you've never put it into words. The cat has decided something about you. It has decided that you are worth being near. That's not a small thing. This is a breed that descended from cats that worked alongside humans for nearly 2,000 years, that was shaped by centuries of assessing who was safe and who was not, that was bred at the very first organized cat exhibition in history for the quality of its composure and self-possession. When it decides to follow you, it is expressing something that has been built into this animal through centuries of careful selection. The following is not the British Shorthair's inability to leave you alone. It's its considered opinion about where it belongs. If this gave you something to think about, leave a comment. What does your British Shorthair do? Does it appear in every room like clockwork? Does it maintain exactly the same distance no matter where you are? Or does it have a particular chair it relocates to whenever you sit down nearby? Close enough to observe, far enough to remain its own creature. Like the video if it helped, and subscribe to the channel or your British Shorthair will conduct a thorough reassessment of its proximity policy, move its settled distance from 2 feet to 12, and maintain that 12-foot perimeter with the absolute consistency only this breed can sustain. It has already begun the evaluation. You have very little time.